Don't turn that on, Derek Cole warned, far too quickly. 5 dead ambulance radios had just crashed onto Marcus Reed's workbench, spraying black dust across his 10-year-old son's hands. Eli turned one cracked amber dial, and a 17 flashed green beneath a peeling red service tag. Marcus seized the microphone as 3 buried tones pulsed through the shop. At the doorway, Claire Bennett froze. Graham Whitmore reached toward the radio. "Dad," Eli whispered, "why did that sound scare you?" 3 hours earlier, Reed's signal repair had smelled of solder, machine oil, and the burnt coffee Marcus had forgotten beside the register. Fluorescent tubes hummed above shelves crowded with old receivers, wire spools, and labeled drawers he had organized with military precision. Rain pressed gray fingerprints against the front window. A yellow rent notice lay face down beneath Marcus's metal toolbox, hidden from Eli but not forgotten. Marcus wore his faded navy work jacket and Naomi's old watch, its scratched face catching the light whenever he tightened a screw. Eli sat at the side table doing math homework, quietly tapping his pencil in time with the static coming from a tabletop radio. Across the street, Mercy Street Clinic had already opened. Through its glass doors, Claire moved between elderly patients in pale blue scrubs, her silver ring turned inward against her palm. Marcus noticed the Whitmore service truck before he heard it. Its clean white body looked out of place beside the puddles and chipped brick storefronts. Graham stepped out first in a charcoal coat, smiling toward a hospital camera crew as though he had arrived to present an award. Derek followed with a plastic shipping bin. "Mr. Reed," Graham said warmly, loud enough for the microphone. "Whitmore Regional believes in supporting local businesses." Marcus wiped his hands on a cloth. "You still owe $1,200 for the clinic relay repair." Graham's smile did not move. "We brought something more useful than a check." Derek tipped the bin. 5 radios struck the steel workbench with a violence that made Eli jerk backward. One cracked against another. A loose screw spun across the surface and dropped to the floor. Graham glanced toward the camera. "Consider it a community equipment donation. Dead equipment for a dying little shop. Seems fair." The people behind him gave small, obedient laughs. Marcus did not answer. A shard of dark plastic had landed beside Eli's wrist. Marcus crossed the space immediately, brushed the dust from his son's fingers, and checked the skin beneath each nail before touching anything else. "You okay?"
"I'm okay."
Marcus moved Eli's chair back, then studied the radios without lifting them. 4 had black screens. The 5th bore the faded number A17 beneath a red service label. Its amber tuning knob was split through the center. Eli leaned closer, curious rather than afraid. "This one still clicks." "Easy," Marcus said. Eli turned the knob once. The radio woke with a weak electrical snap. A green line crawled through the dust on its display. Then came 3 tones, low, high, low, separated by precise half-second gaps. Marcus's breath stopped. 6 years vanished. He was standing in the same shop at midnight, listening to a police scanner while Naomi's ambulance disappeared from dispatch. The same 3 tones had sounded before the channel went silent. Marcus grabbed the microphone but did not transmit. Across the street, Claire had stepped into the clinic doorway, her eyes fixed on A17, then shifted to Derek. Derek's face had lost its color. "Cut the camera," he said. The cameraman hesitated. Graham kept smiling. "There's nothing to record. The units are decommissioned." Marcus switched A17 off and wrapped it in an anti-static cloth. He separated it from the other 4 and wrote the exact time in his repair ledger. Derek moved closer. "Those things are junk. Don't make trouble out of a gift." Marcus looked at him for the first time. "You paid me with them. That means you no longer decide what they can say." The room quieted. Graham's smile thinned, but his voice remained polished. "Be careful, Mr. Reed. Old equipment can tell unreliable stories." Marcus lifted A17 just enough to inspect its underside. The memory seal had been cut diagonally, yet the module beneath it was still in place. Derek glanced toward the door. "That East County unit should have been stripped." Marcus's eyes rose slowly. No one had mentioned East County. No one had said which ambulance carried S-17. Eli watched his father's face. Marcus turned the radio over beneath the work lamp. Under the peeling red tag, almost erased by grime, someone had written 5 words in waterproof ink. Do not disable. Patient routing backup. The words under the peeling red tag seemed to darken beneath the work lamp. Do not disable. Patient routing backup. Marcus read them twice without touching the ink. Behind him, Graham's camera operator lowered the lens, but Derek stepped between the workbench and the door, as if he could block the sentence from leaving the room. It's an obsolete warning. Then why was it covered? Old labels get buried. The fluorescent tubes hummed above them, turning the dust on a 17 silver at the edges. Marcus folded the anti-static cloth over the radio with slow, careful hands, while Graham adjusted his cuffs and recovered the smooth expression he used whenever a camera was near. Mr. Reed, Graham said, we came here to help. I would hate for confusion over discarded equipment to damage that relationship. Marcus glanced at Eli, who had gone quiet beside his math book. We're clear, Marcus said. You called it payment. Graham's eyes held his for half a second too long. Then he smiled, thanked the camera crew, and left as though the visit had ended exactly as planned. By 9 the next morning, the hospital's edited video was already online. The title read, Whitmore Regional Supports Struggling Local Father. The clip began after the radios had hit the table. It showed Graham speaking warmly, Marcus signing the receipt, and Eli bending to pick up a loose screw. The laughter was gone. The unpaid invoice was never mentioned. The final frame froze on Marcus's worn jacket and the faded sign above his shop, making him look less like a contractor and more like the subject of a charity appeal. A customer called before Marcus finished his first coffee. Is this some kind of donation shop now? No. The hospital says they gave you equipment. They paid an invoice with it. The caller went silent. Rainwater ticked against the front glass, and the smell of hot solder drifted from Marcus's bench. On the counter, Naomi's scratched watch reflected the blue light of the phone screen as another comment appeared beneath the video. Good thing the hospital is helping that poor man and his boy. The customer canceled a security radio repair worth nearly a week's rent. An hour later, the landlord slid a yellow notice beneath the door. Marcus picked it up before Eli could read the amount, folded it once, and tucked it beneath his metal toolbox. Eli had already seen the video at school. He did not mention the comments. He only stood beside the workbench and asked, why did they say they donated the radios? Marcus cleaned a line of black dust from the boy's sleeve with his thumb. Because the person holding the camera gets to choose what people see. Can we tell them? We can tell the truth. Marcus looked toward S-17, still wrapped separately from the others. But we tell it in a way they can't cut. Near noon, Derek returned carrying a white folder and wearing the patient smile of someone delivering routine paperwork. Claire entered behind him with a damaged clinic transmitter tucked beneath one arm, but she stopped near the door when she saw the folder. Just a corrected receipt, Derek said. Corrected by who? Marcus asked. Administration. The shop went still except for the soft rattle of rain in the gutter. Derek placed the new page on the counter and turned it toward Marcus with 2 fingers, careful not to touch the grease marks on the wood. The document now described the radios as a free charitable donation. It stated that all memory modules had been removed and that Marcus accepted full responsibility for any unauthorized activation. At the bottom, Derek's electronic signature sat beneath a timestamp almost 3 hours later than the original handoff. Sign here and we can discuss helping with your rent, Derek said. Marcus laid the original receipt beside the new one. He aligned their corners beneath the lamp, then photographed both pages next to the wall clock. Claire watched him instead of Derek. She noticed he did not raise his voice, did not accuse anyone, and did not let either document leave his sight. Her gaze shifted to the asset number printed beside A17. It did not match the number on the corrected receipt. That could be a clerical error, she said carefully. Marcus looked at her. It could. He did not ask her to believe him, He slid both papers into separate clear sleeves and wrote the time in his repair ledger. Derek's smile tightened. No one is going to inspect those memory units anyway. The sentence landed too cleanly. He cleared his throat. I mean, there are no memory units left to inspect. Eli looked up from his homework. Derek bent slightly toward him. Your dad should recognize a good opportunity when one comes through the door. Marcus stepped between them, not fast, not threatening, just certain. You speak to me, not my son. Derek straightened. Claire's eyes dropped to the final line of the corrected receipt, where a small inventory code had been added beneath the signature. Q3 Safety Audit Disposal. She had seen that code before on an internal inspection calendar. 5 hospitals were scheduled to certify their emergency failover systems in 10 days. Marcus followed her gaze, then looked toward the 5 radios on his bench. Derek gathered the unsigned folder and moved toward the door. Pride won't pay your rent, he said. Marcus placed one hand over the yellow notice hidden beneath his toolbox. Neither will a lie once it owns your name. Derek left without answering. Through the rain-streaked glass, Claire watched him make a call before he reached his truck. Then she looked again at the Q3 code, the mismatched asset number, and a 17th unbroken memory seal. If the 5 hospitals were about to certify that their backup radios were still in service, why were all 5 sitting inside Marcus Reed's shop? The 5 radios remained on Marcus Reed's workbench long after Derek's truck disappeared into the rain, each one carrying an asset number that Whitmore Regional still intended to certify as active. Marcus was comparing the Q3 code to the faded label on a 17 when Claire's clinic transmitter gave a sharp burst of static beneath her arm. Mercy Street to Oxygen Transport, do you copy? A woman's voice crackled through. No answer came back. Claire pressed the transmit button again. Transport 7, 6 patients are waiting. Please respond. Only static filled the shop. Marcus looked through the rain-streaked window toward the clinic, where several elderly patients were visible beneath the fluorescent lights. How long has your relay been dropping? He asked. A few seconds at first. Now we've lost the driver completely. Call his cell. It goes straight to voicemail. Claire's fingers tightened around the transmitter. She did not ask Marcus to rebuild the system or work for free. I only need one call to reach him. On the shelf behind Marcus sat a nearly new portable transceiver, the cleanest piece of equipment in the shop. He had planned to sell it that afternoon. The amount penciled on its tag would have covered most of the yellow rent notice hidden beneath his toolbox. Eli followed his father's gaze. Isn't that the one Mr. Lawson wanted? Marcus nodded once. Then he lifted the transceiver from the shelf, placed it inside his metal tool case, and pulled on his navy work jacket. Bring your homework, he told Eli. You can finish it in the clinic waiting room. They crossed the street through cold rain that smelled of wet pavement and diesel exhaust. Inside Mercy Street Clinic, the air carried antiseptic, damp coats, and the faint medicinal sweetness of oxygen tubing. Claire led Marcus to a narrow utility room behind the nurse's station. The relay box hung crooked on the wall beneath a bright Helix Medcom inspection sticker. Marcus opened his toolbox and studied the screws before touching them. The paint inside their slots was unbroken. Sticker says this was inspected 3 months ago, Claire said. Marcus ran a finger over the screw heads. No one opened it. He removed the cover. A burnt connector had blackened one corner of the board, while a battery stamped with an expiration date from 4 years earlier sat beneath a fresh inspection label. One analog wire had been cut so evenly that the copper ends still looked polished. Marcus said nothing. He photographed the box, the intact screw paint, and the cut wire before replacing the damaged connector with a part from his own inventory. On the roof, wind pulled at his jacket as he fastened a length of spare copper pipe to the failing antenna mount. Claire held the ladder while Eli waited safely inside beside an elderly woman named Evelyn Price, who kept tapping the silent alert button clipped to her cardigan. When Marcus returned, Evelyn held it out to him. They say the light works, she said, but I can't hear when they call my name. Marcus crouched beside her chair. The device had no vibration motor, only a tiny speaker she could barely hear. He opened it with a pocket screwdriver, fitted a small motor from a discarded pager into the plastic casing, and connected it to the alert light. When Claire pressed the nurse call test button, the device pulsed gently in Evelyn's palm. Her face softened. Now I won't miss them. Marcus closed the casing and gave it back without writing an invoice. Then he connected his portable transceiver to the repaired relay. Static rolled through the room, followed by a distant voice. Mercy Street, this is Transport 7. We lost the address after the signal dropped. Claire gave the driver the correct building number. 20 minutes later, the first oxygen cylinders rolled through the clinic doors. Marcus carried one to Evelyn's examination room when she tried to wave it toward another patient. Someone else may need it more, she said. They brought enough, Marcus told her. He checked the regulator, adjusted the flow, and stayed until her breathing became slow and even. Back in the utility room, Claire opened the clinic's small donation box. At least take something for the connector. Marcus closed the lid with 2 fingers. That money buys medicine. And your equipment? She looked toward the portable transceiver. Keep it until you have a safe backup. Marcus, you were going to sell that. Eli glanced up from his math worksheet but said nothing. Marcus tightened the last screw on the relay cover. Someone breathing tonight matters more than my sign being lit tomorrow. Claire watched him carry his toolbox toward the door. She had spent months inside Mercy Street searching for proof of altered safety records. Yet Marcus had found more. In 40 minutes than the hospital's inspectors claimed to have found in years. He had also documented every detail before making a repair, even though no one had asked him to. As she turned back toward the open relay box, a strip of black electrical tape beneath the battery caught her eye. Marcus carefully peeled it back. Engraved into the metal was the code HX7B, lock, and an installation date 2 weeks before Naomi Reed's death. Claire reached for her phone to photograph it. Before she could press the shutter, the clinic desk line rang. The caller identification read Helix Medcom. Claire answered without speaking. Calvin Ross's polished voice came through the receiver. Why has someone opened the legacy port at Mercy Street? Marcus looked at the untouched inspection screws, then at the hidden code beneath the tape. No one at the clinic had reported the repair, which meant the small act that restored 6 patients' oxygen deliveries had also awakened something Helix had been secretly watching. Calvin Ross's voice remained smooth on the clinic phone, but the question changed the temperature in the room. Why has someone opened the legacy port at Mercy Street? Claire looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the relay box, where the old copper wire still gleamed beneath the fluorescent light. We restored a failed connection, Claire said. With whose authorization? Calvin asked. A patient needed oxygen. That was not my question. Marcus closed his metal toolbox and wiped rainwater from the handle with his sleeve. He did not argue that the repair had worked. He did not mention the 6 deliveries or Evelyn's steady breathing. Instead, he asked, how did you know the port was open? There was a pause long enough for the electrical hum in the utility room to become noticeable. Calvin recovered quickly. Our systems monitor unauthorized interference for patient safety. Then your system also saw the relay fail, Marcus said. Why didn't anyone call before we fixed it? Calvin's answer came wrapped in policy. He said legacy hardware could create inaccurate alerts, that unlicensed work could expose the clinic to liability, and that Mercy Street should disconnect the temporary equipment until a certified Helix technician arrived. Claire glanced toward the waiting room, where the oxygen driver was still unloading cylinders. How soon? She asked. Within 48 hours. The clinic was offline tonight. Then follow emergency procedure. We did, Marcus said quietly. Calvin did not respond to him again. He told Claire not to let the repairman remove or copy any internal markings, then ended the call. The word repairman stayed in the room after the line went dead. Claire's eyes moved to the rubbed pencil impression Marcus had made of HX7B lock. That code may be a security designation, she said. Her tone was careful, not dismissive. It could be. And the call could have been automated. It could have. Marcus wrapped the paper rubbing in wax tissue and placed it inside a document envelope. He did not ask her to choose sides. He only looked at the hidden installation date again. 2 weeks before Naomi died. By the time Marcus and Eli returned to the shop, rain had softened into mist. The yellow rent notice still waited beneath the toolbox. A 17 sat under the work lamp, isolated from the other radios, its cracked amber dial facing upward like a half-closed eye. Eli set his backpack down. "Dad." That red sticker was already peeling yesterday. Marcus looked at him. "You sure?"
Eli nodded.
Mr. Derek pushed it down before the camera stopped. It came back up. It was the kind of detail a 10-year-old remembered because he had been watching hands while the adults watched faces. Marcus thanked him, then told him to finish his homework at the side table. He put on his magnifying visor and examined the edge of the service tag. Fresh adhesive had been pressed over older dust, confirming the label had been disturbed recently. Beneath it, the handwritten warning remained. Marcus removed the rear panel without breaking the cut memory seal. The inside smelled faintly of burned insulation and old metal. A compact memory module was still seated in place, contradicting Derek's corrected receipt. Marcus connected an isolated reader, keeping a 17 disconnected from the internet. Lines of diagnostic data appeared on the small monitor. Claire stood across the bench but did not lean closer until he invited her. "What are we looking for?" she asked. "Anything that happened before the radio stopped talking." The log showed ordinary check-ins, signal strength, route confirmations, then a command string Marcus did not recognize at first. He enlarged it. "Remote failover disabled." Beneath it sat the authorization token HMX04. 11 minutes later, the system rebooted. Marcus's hand stopped on the mouse. The shop seemed suddenly too quiet. He opened the wooden box from the highest shelf, the one Eli had never seen him touch. Inside lay Naomi's hospital bracelet, an ambulance invoice, a folded death report, and an old phone with a cracked corner. He placed the bracelet beside A17. The vehicle number printed in faded blue matched the radio's asset number exactly. Claire read the death report. "This report lists a different unit." Marcus set Derek's corrected receipt beside it. The substituted asset number matched both documents. Claire's expression changed, but not into belief. "That could still be a reporting error," she said. "Yes. Or the radio clock could be wrong." "Yes." Marcus turned the monitor toward her. "So we verify the clock before we accuse anyone." He copied the data 3 times, then sealed one drive in an evidence bag and wrote the date across the flap. Claire watched his hands. There was no triumph in them, only restraint. She used her clinic credentials to search HMX04. The system returned no result. 1 second later, her account locked for suspicious activity. She stared at the screen. Marcus asked one simple question. "If the code doesn't exist, what exactly did your system recognize?" Claire did not answer. She called Ruth Carver, the retired dispatcher who had worked the night Naomi died. Ruth remembered an 11-minute silence and said she had filed a union complaint. She also said she still possessed a certified recording of the emergency channel. Before Claire could arrange retrieval, Ruth's voice lowered. "A Whitmore attorney just emailed me about an old confidentiality agreement." Claire went still. She had told no one about the call. Then Marcus's independent engineer phoned with the first verification result. HMX04 was not an error code, and it was not a passive security marker. It was an administrative command designed to disable the backup channel remotely. The engineer's words remained on speakerphone after the line went quiet. HMX04 was an administrative command built to disable the backup channel remotely. Marcus wrote the time beside the code in his repair ledger, then shut the old phone inside Naomi's wooden box before Eli could see how tightly his hand was shaking. Across the bench, Claire's hospital account still displayed the red message access suspended. "Someone knew what I searched," she said. "Or the system flags that code automatically," Marcus replied. "You still think this could be innocent?" "I think evidence gets weaker when we decide what it means too early." The air conditioner clicked off. For a moment, the only sound in Reed's signal repair was rain slipping through the gutter and Eli's pencil, moving across a math worksheet. Then Claire's clinic radio erupted with overlapping voices. Mercy Street, we lost Unit 12. Patient has stroke symptoms. No receiving confirmation from Riverside. Claire snatched up the handset. A community ambulance carrying Henry Walsh, a retired teacher, had lost digital contact near the boundary between two hospital networks. His speech was already slurring, and neither facility would authorize the driver to proceed without confirmation that a stroke team and imaging suite were ready. Tell them to use the emergency cellular line, Claire said. They tried, the nurse answered. The call keeps routing back to dispatch. Marcus looked toward A17 beneath the work lamp. Claire followed his eyes. Can it reach them? Maybe. That isn't an answer. It's the only honest one. He asked for the ambulance's last known location, current channel, and unit identifier. Then he told Eli to remain at the side table and keep working. The boy nodded, though his pencil had stopped moving. Claire carried A17 across the street while Marcus brought the portable transceiver he had left with the clinic. In the narrow utility room, fluorescent light flattened every color except the amber. Crack in A17 style. A nurse pulled a chair away from the wall, then stopped halfway when Marcus asked everyone except Claire and the dispatcher to step back from the equipment. The metal legs remained suspended above the tile. You are not authorized to operate emergency communications, the clinic administrator said. Her tone was controlled, shaped by fear of liability rather than cruelty. I'm not making medical decisions, Marcus replied. I'm restoring a path for the people who are. Claire placed her hand on the file folder she had brought from the nurse's station. Record everything. Camera, wall clock, radio display. Nothing gets deleted. She still did not say she trusted Marcus. She simply made sure the test could be verified. Marcus connected A17 to the clinic transceiver through an isolated coupler. He asked Claire to read every frequency back to him. When she reversed 2 digits, he corrected her without impatience and made her repeat the full sequence. Ready? She asked. Open it for 90 seconds, he said. No longer. Claire turned the cracked amber dial. 3 buried tones sounded through the room. The display turned green. Static rolled from the speaker, followed by a driver's strained voice. Unit 12 calling any receiving stroke center. Patient male, 72, facial droop, right side weakness, onset approximately 26 minutes. Riverside answered at once. Their stroke team was ready. The driver confirmed the route and accelerated toward the correct hospital. Marcus watched the wall clock. At 87 seconds, the administrator whispered, "Keep it open." At 90, Marcus shut A17 down. "Why did you turn it off?" she demanded. "Because we proved the path works," he said. "Anything more risks the patient's record and this evidence." The chair legs finally touched the floor. No one laughed. No one questioned whether Marcus had imagined the signal. The clinic's camera showed the exact sequence. A17's internal log recorded a stable connection. Riverside confirmed that Henry Walsh arrived inside the treatment window and was taken directly for intervention. Claire's hand slowly lowered onto the folder in front of her. She looked at Marcus differently now, not with gratitude and not with pity, but with the caution of someone whose doubt had just been forced to make room for fact. "I used to work emergency medicine," she said quietly. "I left after a safety report was changed before it reached review." Marcus unplugged the coupler. "Then you know one successful call doesn't prove who shut the channel down." "No," Claire said, "but it proves you weren't lying about what the channel could do." Marcus carried A17 back toward the shop instead of waiting for praise. On the way through the waiting room, he stopped to repair the loose battery cover on Evelyn Price's vibrating alert device. She smiled when it pulsed against her palm. Eli, watching from across the street through the shop window, finally picked up his pencil again. Before Marcus reached the door, Claire's phone rang. The caller identification read Graham Whitmore. She answered on speaker. "Claire," Graham said, his voice polished and low. "Did you just reopen 7B? The room went still. Claire had never spoken the channel's name outside the utility room. 3 seconds later, The Helix maintenance screen flashed a warning. Unauthorized legacy channel detected. Marcus returned to the bench and connected the second discarded radio to his isolated reader. Its memory opened with the same command token, HMX-04, followed by another 11-minute failover lock, and a date tied to a fatal ambulance delay no family had ever been told involved lost communications. The second radio's memory carried the same HMX-04 command, the same 11-minute failover lock, and a date tied to another ambulance death that had been blamed on traffic. By midnight, Marcus had read all 5 modules. Each radio came from a different hospital. Each had been remotely disabled before a serious delay. Each was removed from service within 48 hours, then reassigned a new asset number on paper. He arranged them beneath the fluorescent lights in a straight line, 5 dark screens reflecting his face back at him. "These aren't 5 failures," Claire said. "Not yet," Marcus replied. "They're 5 things that look alike." Eli had fallen asleep in the office, chair with his jacket folded beneath his cheek. Marcus covered him with an old shop blanket before returning to the bench. He could have photographed the records and sent them to every local station before morning. He could have put Graham's name beside Naomi's and let public anger do the rest. Instead, he called the community legal clinic and asked how to contact the 4 families without making claims the evidence had not yet proved. The first woman he reached had lost her daughter during a transfer from Northside. "Are you telling me the hospital killed her?" she asked. Marcus looked at Naomi's bracelet beside A17. "I'm telling you there may be records you were never allowed to see. A lawyer should review them before anyone tells you what they mean." The woman began to cry, but Marcus did not use the sound to strengthen his case. He gave her the attorney's number and promised nothing he could not prove. The next afternoon, Ruth Carver's certified recording arrived through her former union attorney. The padded envelope carried 3 signatures across the seal and a date stamp from 6 years earlier. Claire set a small audio recorder on the workbench while Marcus checked the chain of custody form against the tracking label. When he pressed play, static filled the shop. Then a driver's voice emerged through the hiss. "Dispatch, digital link is down. Requesting legacy 7B. Patient condition worsening." A man answered from the control room. "Legacy failover remains suspended under modernization protocol." Marcus did not move. 11 minutes later, the driver returned, breathless and farther away. "No receiving confirmation. We're diverting east." The printer in the corner finished a page and stopped. The sudden silence afterward felt heavier than the recording. Claire slowly placed Naomi's hospital bracelet beside the transcript. The timestamps matched A17 down to the second. 3 retired dispatch employees listened separately. 2 identified the male voice as Derek Cole. The third said she could not be certain. Marcus kept all 3 statements. "You could leave that one out," Claire said. "Then the truth would only be as honest as the people we're investigating." Claire looked at him for a long moment. She no longer saw a grieving husband searching for someone to blame. She saw a man protecting evidence even when uncertainty hurt his own case. That evening, she removed the silver ring she always wore turned inward. The Whitmore crest caught the shop light. She used it to open an encrypted family archive on her laptop. A founding resolution appeared on the screen, signed by her father, requiring every Whitmore hospital to maintain an independent analog failover channel. Below it sat a later memorandum canceling the requirement. The electronic signature was dated 3 weeks after her father's stroke, when hospital records showed he could no longer type, speak clearly, or authorize digital documents. Marcus noticed the name at the top of Claire's access screen. "Claire Whitmore, voting trustee." "Bennett was my mother's name," she said. "Graham is my uncle. My father founded the system. I control the voting trust." Marcus's face did not change, but his hand moved away from the laptop. "You knew your family might be tied to Naomi. I suspected reports were being altered. I didn't know about S17. You let me tell you about my wife while you kept your name hidden. I thought it protected the investigation." Marcus looked toward the 5 radios. "It protected your control over the room." Claire did not defend herself. She opened the archive fully and gave him permission to copy every file. Inside were insurance certifications claiming all 5 failover radios remained active, even though the devices sat on Marcus's bench. There were maintenance invoices signed by Calvin Ross, disposal orders approved before the Q3 safety audit, and an email from Calvin to Derek that read, "Once legacy is gone, every failure becomes an upgrade event." Graham had been copied through an abbreviated executive account. The evidence still did not prove he designed the scheme, but another report showed he had learned about the first fatal delay after Naomi's death and signed the safety certification anyway. Claire's phone vibrated against the table. A message from Graham appeared across the screen. "Return my radios before someone else gets hurt." Marcus read it once. "He called them donations yesterday," Claire said. "Today they're his." Marcus gathered the recording, the 5 memory reports, the false insurance certifications, and the signed family resolution into separate evidence sleeves. He refused Claire's offer to summon the board privately. "No closed meeting," he said. "No family settlement. Lawyers, engineers, the families, and a public record." Claire nodded, though agreeing could cost her control of the trust and expose her father's foundation to lawsuits. Outside, a Whitmore vehicle slowed in front of the shop, then continued through the rain. Seconds later, Claire's archive access disappeared from the laptop. A final hospital notice arrived before the screen went dark. Helix Medcom would push a mandatory security update across all 5 hospitals the following evening, and buried in its technical language was one instruction: disable every unauthorized legacy response. By 8 the next morning, Reed Signal Repair no longer looked like a neighborhood shop. Hospital security stood beside the door. News vans lined the curb. A folding table had been placed beneath the faded blue sign, and Graham Whitmore stood behind it with 2 attorneys, Derek Cole, Calvin Ross, and a state contract inspector. The 5 ambulance radios remained visible through the front window, arranged exactly where Marcus had documented them. Graham called the gathering an emergency safety recall. His voice was calm, regretful, almost compassionate. He said a struggling local repairman had unknowingly activated obsolete equipment, endangered emergency communications, and misunderstood a charitable donation as payment. Every sentence sounded reasonable when separated from the evidence. Marcus stepped outside wearing his Navy work jacket. He looked tired. Naomi's scratched watch rested against his wrist, and the yellow rent notice remained folded in his pocket. Eli stood close enough to touch his sleeve but far from the cameras. Graham opened a leather folder. "Mr. Reed, no one wants to punish you. Then don't rewrite what happened. This is about patient safety. So is the truth." The crowd quieted. Wind pushed. The smell of wet pavement and hot coffee between the parked vehicles. Graham slid a settlement across the table. It offered to pay Marcus's rent, fund Eli's education, provide a 3-year consulting contract, and waive any claim over the unauthorized use of 7B. In return, Marcus would surrender the radios and sign a statement saying their data could not be trusted. A reporter whispered that the offer sounded generous. Another asked why Marcus would refuse help his son clearly needed. For a moment, Graham appeared to have won the room. Marcus placed the yellow rent notice beside the contract. Eli looked at both pieces of paper, then reached up and held his father's hand. Marcus did not squeeze back immediately. He was reading the final paragraph. "Sign," Graham said softly, "and your son never has to worry about this shop again." Marcus looked at Eli before answering. "My son is watching me decide what our name is worth." He pushed the contract back and signed. Graham's expression tightened, but only for a second. Calvin opened a technical report claiming a 17 could broadcast unstable signals and interfere with modern dispatch systems. Derek added that all 5 radios had been stripped before disposal and contained no reliable operational memory. Marcus did not argue. He asked the inspector to watch the original hospital video. Claire had remained near the rear of the crowd in plain clothes, silent until an employee from Whitmore's media office handed her a flash drive. The unedited footage appeared on a portable screen. 5 radios crashed onto Marcus's table. Graham called them dead equipment. Derek ordered the camera cut when A17 produced 3 tones. The asset number remained visible in the corner of the frame. Marcus placed the original receipt beneath it, then the corrected receipt. Same radio, he said. 2 asset numbers. One says payment. One says donation. One says the memory was removed. He turned A17 toward the inspector without breaking its evidence seal. The memory is still inside. Graham recovered quickly. He blamed an administrative mistake and said charitable inventory often passed through several databases. The explanation softened the crowd again. Clerical errors happened. Asset codes changed. A frightened shop owner might see conspiracy where there was only confusion. Then Marcus asked one question. If the memory was removed, why does your agreement need me to say the data inside it is unreliable? No one answered immediately. The snap of a photographer's shutter sounded unnaturally loud. Claire stepped forward and introduced herself publicly as Claire Whitmore, voting trustee of the hospital network. She did not defend Marcus's character. She presented the clinic camera recording, the 90-second 7B transmission, Henry Walsh's verified admission time, and the Helix alert generated 3 seconds after the channel opened. This proves the equipment worked, Graham said. It does not prove anyone disabled it unlawfully. That is correct, Marcus replied. He refused to claim more than the evidence showed. The inspector turned to Calvin and asked about HMX-04. Calvin glanced toward Graham. It only locks failover, he said. It cannot take down the primary channel. The words were already out before he realized no one had publicly explained what HMX-04 did. A murmur moved through the crowd. Graham reached for the microphone, but Claire raised one hand and instructed the media employee to preserve every recording. Marcus asked Evelyn Price to take Eli across the street into Mercy Street Clinic. Eli hesitated, then pointed once toward A17. That red label was already torn before Mr. Derek pushed it down. Derek's jaw shifted. Evelyn took the boy's hand and led him safely away from the cameras. The inspector prepared to seal the radios in place. Then every hospital phone on the folding table began ringing at once. Northside had lost 3 ambulances. St. Anne's could not confirm neonatal beds. Riverside had no stroke routing link. County General's dispatch screen had gone black. The Helix update had activated hours early, and 5 hospitals were now calling the man they had accused of endangering them. The inspector stood between Marcus and the radios. These are evidence, she said. Outside, sirens moved through the city without confirmed destinations. Claire looked at the emergency authorization form in her hand, then at A17 behind the glass, as the command center called one final time and asked the question no one in the crowd expected to hear. Mr. Reed, can you get every hospital back on the air? Claire Whitmore signed the emergency authorization across the hood of a state inspector's car, giving Marcus Reed permission to use the 5 sealed radios without breaking their chain of custody. Every movement would be recorded. Every memory module would be copied first. Every hospital engineer would watch without touching the equipment. 20 minutes later, the clear evidence bags lay open beneath the white lights of Whitmore Regional Emergency Command Center. Red warnings pulsed across the wall screens. Northside had lost 3 ambulances. Riverside could not route a stroke patient. St. Anne's had a neonatal transport circling without confirmation. The room smelled of overheated electronics, printer toner, and the coffee someone had abandoned when the first system failed. Can you bring it back? Graham asked. I can open another path, Marcus said. The dispatchers bring it back. He placed the 5 radios across the central console, each beside its copied memory log and verified asset number. An independent engineer read the evidence seals aloud while a camera recorded the wall clock. Claire stood at the dispatch desk, not beside Marcus. Graham remained behind her with Calvin and Derek, their badges suddenly looking smaller beneath the emergency lights. Marcus assigned 4 radios to 4 regional relay points. He used strips of colored tape, a grease pencil, and the handwritten frequency sheet Eli had given him before leaving with Evelyn. The child was safe across the street at Mercy Street Clinic, waiting beside the vibrating call device Marcus had repaired. Northside, Read back. 451.7. Riverside. 453.2. St. Anne's. 456.8. Marcus checked each number twice. Then he connected the radios through isolated couplers so no Helix server could rewrite their memory. Calvin stepped closer. You're creating an unsecured network. Then explain why your secured one cannot hear. An ambulance, Marcus said. The command center went quiet except for the soft fans inside the consoles. Calvin stopped moving. Marcus switched on the first relay. Static. The second answered with a weak carrier tone. The third brought a dispatcher's voice through in broken pieces. The fourth stabilized the regional loop. A map on the wall gained for small green points, but the center remained dark. A 17 still sat beneath its cracked amber dial and peeling red tag. Graham stared at it. Turn it on, he said. Marcus looked toward the evidence camera. Seal number. The inspector read it aloud. Memory copy? Verified. All medical decisions stay with dispatch. Claire nodded. On the record. Marcus turned the amber dial. 3 buried tones moved through the room. Low. High. Low. A green line crawled across a 17th display exactly as it had in the shop. Then a voice broke through the static. Unit 42. Neonatal transport. We need a receiving hospital now. The dispatcher leaned toward her microphone. St. Anne's confirms NICU bed and respiratory team. Proceed east and trance. Another ambulance called. Then another. Northside answered. Riverside answered. County General answered. 5 green points brightened across the wall map. Connected by a thin line the multimillion-dollar Helix system had been designed to erase. The phones stopped ringing one by one. No one applauded. Marcus kept his hand near A17 until every active ambulance confirmed its destination. Only when Unit 42 reported that the newborn had arrived stable did he step back. Claire opened the evidence file on the central screen. First came the clinic camera showing Marcus reopening 7B for 90 seconds and routing Henry Walsh safely to Riverside. Then the 5 memory logs appeared, each carrying HMX 04 before an 11-minute failover lock. The Helix update log followed, proving the current outage began when the system automatically disabled every legacy response. No outside attack. No random equipment failure. A control built into the network itself. Calvin's face had gone colorless. His pen slipped from his fingers and rolled beneath the console. Claire displayed his earlier words. From the public recording, it only locks failover. Cannot take down the primary channel. Beside them appeared the private design document using the same language. Derek lowered his eyes as Ruth Carver's certified recording began to play. The command center heard Naomi's driver request 7B. They heard the refusal under the modernization protocol. They heard the forced diversion. Then they heard 11 minutes of empty channel. Marcus stood completely still. The old watch on his wrist ticked beneath his sleeve. When the recording ended, 17 spoke again with a present-day driver's voice. Neonatal patient delivered. Stable on arrival. The hum of the projector became the loudest sound in the room. Graham's hand tightened around the back of a chair. I didn't know Derek would keep doing it after the first incident, he said. Claire turned slowly. Cameras were still recording. Graham looked toward them and understood what he had admitted. He knew there had been a first incident, knew Derek was involved, and had signed the safety certifications anyway. Claire used her authority as voting trustee to suspend Graham, freeze the Helix contract, preserve every server and email, and notify state investigators and the affected families. Graham's badge struck the table when he removed it. He did not argue. There was nowhere left for the explanation to go. He looked at Marcus. Tell me what you want. Marcus rested one palm beside A17. I wanted my wife to come home. You can't give me that. His voice did not rise. Give every other family a system that does not depend on someone choosing profit over a second channel. Across the street, Claire called Mercy Street Clinic. Eli listened as she told him the ambulances were safe. The boy closed his eyes, exhaled, and held the repaired alert device in both hands. Justice had begun in the command center, But it had not yet reached Naomi's record, the other families, or the guilt Marcus had carried for 6 years. Now that the truth could no longer be buried, what would Marcus choose to do with the power everyone had finally been forced to place in his hands? The command center emptied without applause. Engineers sealed the servers, state investigators copied the recordings, and Graham Whitmore left his badge on the same table where a 17 still glowed green. Marcus did not watch him go. He waited beside the radio until the last ambulance confirmed arrival, then crossed the street to Mercy Street Clinic and found Eli asleep in a waiting room chair with Evelyn Price's repaired alert device resting in his lap. When the boy woke, Marcus knelt in front of him. "Did we help them?" Eli asked. "The dispatchers did their jobs," Marcus said. "We gave them a way to hear each other." Within 72 hours, Graham was suspended, Derek lost access to the fleet records, and Helix Medcom's contract was frozen. State health officials preserved every server and notified the 4 other families whose ambulance files carried the same 11-minute silence. The hospital's attorneys offered Marcus a settlement large enough to erase the shop's debts and secure Eli's future, but the agreement required him to keep the other families' names and altered records confidential. Marcus read every page beneath the same fluorescent light where the 5 radios had first landed. Then he pushed the agreement back. He did not refuse lawful compensation for what his family had lost. He refused the silence attached to it. "My wife's record does not become true if 4 other families are still living inside a lie," he said. 3 months later, an independent audit confirmed that Helix had built a single point of failure into the hospital network. Derek had altered asset records and received payments from the contractor, and Graham had signed safety certifications after learning that Naomi's ambulance delay was connected to the disabled backup channel. Graham was removed by the board and referred for investigation. Derek faced charges for falsifying records and obstructing a safety review. Calvin Ross and Helix were barred from new hospital contracts while civil and criminal inquiries continued. No one was dragged away for the cameras. The consequences arrived through signed orders, surrendered access cards, preserved emails, revoked contracts, and testimony given under oath. Mercy Street Clinic received an independent backup system, a permanent maintenance budget, and the right to request outside inspections without permission from Whitmore executives. The affected families were given their full records and separate attorneys, along with the choice to speak publicly or remain private. Marcus never used their grief to make his own story louder. At a community meeting held in a plain church basement, the hospital's interim board corrected Naomi Reed's record in public. Marcus had called for help on time. He had given the correct location. The ambulance had been delayed because its failover channel was deliberately disabled. His name was removed from every internal note that had implied confusion or error on his part. When Naomi's name was read, Marcus remained seated until the names of the other patients were read too. Then he stood beside Eli and placed Naomi's old watch on the table. "She was not a case number," he said. "She liked cereal that was too sweet, lost her keys twice a week, and always remembered when our son needed poster board for school." The room became quiet. Not the guilty silence of the command center, but the kind that comes when people finally understand the life hidden inside a file. Marcus accepted the court-approved compensation and used part of it to keep Reed's signal repair open. He refused the hospital's offer to become a highly paid technology executive. Instead, he accepted a limited public advisory role with recorded meetings and no authority to hide reports. The old shop became the Naomi Reed Emergency Signal Workshop, training single parents, veterans, hospital technicians, and teenagers in reliable backup communications. Rural clinics received radios without surrendering control of their data. Maintenance logs became public. Whistleblowers received legal protection. A 17 was placed inside a glass case near Marcus's metal toolbox, its cracked amber dial, peeling red tag, and cut seal left exactly as they had been. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "A backup exists because every life deserves another way home." Eli helped install the plaque by holding the flashlight and reading the screw numbers while his father handled the tools. Later, he admitted that he had sometimes believed Marcus kept broken radios because he could not let Naomi go. Marcus told him that might have been partly true. Machines had always made him feel that every failure had a cause and every cause could be found. He opened Naomi's wooden box, placed her watch and old voicemail inside, and told Eli he was allowed to remember his mother through ordinary mornings, not only through the night she died. Claire did not become CEO or use the Whitmore Trust to buy Marcus's forgiveness. She opened the family archive to investigators, stepped away from direct control during the reforms, and returned to emergency medicine part-time at Mercy Street. Months later, she came to the workshop after closing with 2 cups of coffee and an old radio that had belonged to her father. "Can you teach me how to hear when a signal is getting weak?" she asked. Marcus looked at the empty chair beside his bench, then pulled it out for her. "First, you learn to listen before you try to fix it." Nothing more was promised that night. Trust returned in small, honest pieces. Outside, Eli helped Claire cover a shipment of radios bound for 3 rural clinics, while a light rain softened the street. A-17 released its 3 routine test tones from behind the glass. Marcus looked up, but this time his breath did not stop. He switched off the workshop lights, joined his son beneath the old Navy jacket held over both their heads, and walked home as the green signal on a passing ambulance blinked steadily through the rain. Proof that dignity never needed to shout, and kindness had only been waiting for the moment it could become a road home for someone else.